everyone, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the January 2021 episode of Tea with Me. I have a lovely chai tea today with some soy milk because I cannot drink dairy, and it's warming me up because today is a super cold day in New Hampshire. It is negative 12 degrees wind chill out there. It is a cold, blustery, horrible day for my dogs to be wandering outside to do their business. And it's not unusual for this time of year to have some days like this, but hopefully the snap will be short-lived. If you're here, it's probably because you're either into books and bookmaking, you might be into mixed media and papercraft, or you might really enjoy vintage. I cover all three. Those are my passions, and we are going to touch upon each one of those today. We are going to be talking about books as we always do. I have a couple recommendations for books that we can use for inspiration or in our projects. I'm recommending a novel this month, which I never have before, but it totally fits in with the vibe of this channel. And I'm going to share with you some treasures that I've been hinting at in Instagram. I am so excited about these, and I have fallen into a rabbit hole in learning about them, and I can't wait to share them with you. So let's get started. Okay, so this month, one of the books I'm recommending goes outside of the scope of books I usually recommend. If you've watched my episodes before, they're usually about books that can be inspirational for your work or you can actually use as material. This is actually a novel I'm reading. Well, I'm not actually reading it, I'm listening to it. I have it in audiobook form. And I just think it really will speak to people who love books and journals and vintage, and I just think this community will really appreciate it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it. Because it's an audiobook that I'm listening to, I've just printed out, the cover of what the actual novel looks like. And it's a fairly new novel, so it's still in hardback. The name of the book is called The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek. It's historical fiction, but it's based on real life events and people of Appalachia. And I'm finding it so incredibly interesting. I don't want to give too much away about the book, but it is about essentially the Great Depression and how poor the people of Kentucky, especially in Appalachia, were. And within this group of people were a group of real life families that were called the blue-skinned people of Kentucky. And they had a abnormality to their blood that made them blue. And the lead character in this story is named Cussie Mary Carter, and she is part of a program that Roosevelt put together in the Depression to help people have jobs, and it's the Kentucky Pack Horse Library Project. And because so many people lived in the mountains, you could be a woman and work. You could be a man too, but mostly it was women that were the librarians, and they would get a pack horse, not from the government. They'd have to rent one or have one, and they would have routes all over the mountains, and they would bring reading literature to the people, the very poor and uneducated people up in the mountains. And the goal the government thought is the more reading material they could bring, the more educated people could be, the more they could be exposed to the outside world. Reading could help them, deal with their troubles, especially because they were all so poor and hungry. And it gave jobs to these women. And this story is all about Cussie Mary. And if you love books, it's such a wonderful story about the importance of books, the importance of reading, the importance of opening up ourselves to other worlds through books. But what I really loved, and I think our community would love, is that one of the things Cussie Mary does is she gets magazines and newspapers from richer towns and libraries that throw them away, and she cuts out articles and makes these scrapbooks and delivers the scrapbooks to women all over her area, and they add to the scrapbooks with recipes. And so they're full of recipes and ways to keep your home, and patterns for dressing, for making homemade clothes, and how to make the most out of things, like how to recycle things into other things and make the most of your dollar. And even though these people live far apart and don't see each other, they get these scrapbooks delivered to them, and they get to add to them. And I thought, well, there's your original junk journal. There's a great example of journaling and junk journaling and scrapbooking in a way that helps communities. And I just was so touched by it. It's a book that is really interesting because you learn so much about how reading and books make such a difference in people's lives. There's certainly a lot of discussion about race relations and color, but not just as you would expect, because now we have a third component of the blue-skinned people and how they fit into the picture. It's an interesting book to read now about the Depression and how some really difficult times and sacrifices, because we're living in a difficult time, and this kind of puts it in perspective. So anyway, I'm not done it yet, but you could get this book on Kindle. It's only like $8. I get it through my Audible file, but my subscription, it is considered included membership. I don't have to pay extra for it. You could get it through your library. You could get it digital contact through your library. It's just a wonderful book. I will put the information in the box below. It's written by Kim Michelle Richardson, and I think you guys will like it. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so moving on to my share of this month's books. One is old and one is new. So this one, I think I probably got at a yard sale or a book sale, and I couldn't have paid more than $1 for it. My guess is I probably got it at last year's library book sale, and the hardcovers at our library book sale are $1, so that's probably what I paid for this book. It's called His Eyes on the Sparrow, and the artwork is by Linda Marin or Maron. I'm not Maron. I don't know how to spell it. I'm guessing it's Marin. And it's based on I don't know if it's a gospel or a religious song called His Eyes on the Sparrow, which is in the back. So this would definitely be a good book if you're a faith journaler or somebody who looks for faith inspiration. But what drew me to the book was the cover. And what's inside is just very beautiful artwork that could be either inspirational to your own work, or you could cut up and use in your junk journals or your projects. It's from Harvest House Publishers in Eugene, Oregon, and it was published in 2013. So it's definitely a newer book. I looked it up. You can get this book with shipping for about $5 from Amazon or Thrift Books. So it's not a very expensive book to get, and it's would be a nice little inspiration or a book to use in your artwork. There's gorgeous collages throughout this book, and quotes. Some are scripture, some are poets, some are philosophers. And it's sort of like a nice inspiration book. It'd be a great book to take a page and use in your work. You could cut out a quote if you're looking for beautiful words for your quote journal. Some people have inspiration journals. There's just a lot in here, and each page is slightly a different style. I mean, look how beautiful that is. Just really gorgeous. And on this page we have 3 poets, and then we have we have 4 poets, I think, and it's just a really beautiful book. Like I said, I would think faith-based journalers would enjoy this. Anybody who wants some inspirational quotes, if you're looking for gorgeous artwork. It's not a big book, but it's filled to the brim I mean, it's gorgeous for fussy cutting. It's gorgeous for collaging. Really great little book. Look at that spread right there in the middle. Really beautiful. Has sort of like vintage wallpaper type of look with it, with some collage. Really beautiful. So that is my first recommendation. My second one was a little tougher for me to get. Let me see if I can get the, let's see if I can find the very tattered book jacket. So James Laver, he is sort of an expert when it comes to dressing and fashion through the centuries, and he has a lot of very popular books that have a lot of illustrations in them. But I kind of stumbled upon this one at an auction, and I could not afford the one that went to auction, so I've been kind of keeping an eye on it on different like eBay and thrift books, and one came up on eBay. I didn't pay a lot for it, but they don't come up often, so I'm just going to give you this quick run through in case you ever do get to see it. This one happened to be one book in the Junior Heritage book series. It was written by James Laver and illustrated by John Mansbridge, and I think this one's from the 60s. Let's see if I can. It's out of London, 1956. So this must, the Junior Heritage books, I'm not sure where they're from, if they're all from London or where, but it was the illustrations. First of all, the paper is this creamy, thick, sort of eggshell, you know, really nice, smooth, beautiful paper. And all the illustrations are of costumes or dress from, you know, through the centuries. So we have from the Saxons all the way up to late Victorian time. And because this is a Junior Heritage book, which was written more for children, it's written in very, you know, layman type of, you know, kind of on the younger side, probably more what speaking to me, but the pictures are very beautiful. They're really rich. The pages, the illustrations are very rich. The colors are rich. I love this page that just has the red, white, and black on it. They have all these beautiful illustrations, and I just thought, oh, I love this page. Look at this page. And it's all about, you know, the headdresses and shirts. This is, look at the royalty. It's gorgeous. Spanish trends. This is French. Look at this one, has yellow in it. And this is in the 1700s. Look at this one. Look at this one in 1772, the powdered wigs. The colors are really muted and really beautiful. Well, I guess they're not too muted. That's pretty dark green. Black and white. I think now we're going more towards we're getting closer to the Victorian period. And we have our trousers in, oh, I should be able to say that, crinolines, I think. And if anybody is watching Bridgerton right now, this is what you're seeing in the Bridgerton TV show, what they're wearing. So very, very cool. Really think this book is just a great resource and really fun to look at. It's not a very big book, but kind of hard to come by. So that's the Junior Heritage book in costume. So those are my book reviews. Okay, it's treasure time, and I'm so excited. So, first of all, I have to apologize because anybody who knows me knows I almost never have my nails done. I have the worst manicures. My nails are so soft. I'm always in the paint and dirt, doing something crazy with my hands, and I just can't keep a manicure to save my life. Not to mention I'm very, let's call it frugal. I'd rather spend my money on vintage things than on my nails. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time, because when I show you some things up close, I apologize that you have to look at my fingers as they are, but it is what it is. So I tend, let me take a sip here, to fall down rabbit holes. Do you guys do that? Do you fall down rabbit holes? I fall down them all the time. I'll find something I love that's vintage or old, and then I have to know the history. And then if it's something that's really interesting, then I go further and further and further. And then before I know it, I'm full-fledged in love and learning, buying, doing what I can. So I stumbled across, through my love and our love of papercraft and writing letters, wax seals. I was looking into the history of wax seals. And I don't even know how I found the first one, but I found something called a wax seal fob. And I really didn't know what that was. And I'm here today to share my collection with you, because this has become something that I've recently got into and I just absolutely love, and I have a great little collection going. So I need to give you a little history first. So I'm just going to open the box and let you look at some pretty little things while I talk. So in the 17th and 18th century, pocket watches were sort of like the fashion of nobility. They were these little marvels of science and you could keep time all the time, and you could put them in your pocket, and they were beautiful little pieces of works of art. And both gentlemen and ladies wore them on chains with fobs. And on these fobs, they had keys and personal wax seals attached to the watches. Now, watch chains were long, and they made sure you could see them under their coat. And originally, fob was the name of that tiny little pocket that was sewn near the waistband of breeches, where a gentleman would keep his valuables, including his pocket watch. So the pocket watch would fit in the fob, and then the chain would go up and sort of get fastened in the vest, and the decorative chain was shown. And then the things that started hanging from the chain started being given the descriptor of fob, if it wasn't the watch key or if it wasn't the watch itself. So you basically had your watch, your fob, and your key. The charms that dangled from both a lady's and a gentleman's watch chain were usually personal necessities. Most often they were a watch key, like that, because they needed to keep the watch wound, and a wax seal, which looks like this. And then the watch. And if you had any money, you had all three. You had the watch, the key, and the seal. Now, the key, of course, was to keep the watch wound, but the seal was a much more personal piece because it was used for correspondence. And since not everybody could read, you needed the seal to identify who it was coming from. So you could tell which house it was coming from by the seal. Now, if you could not read or write, then you would go to the town scribe and you would dictate a letter to them, and then you would then take that letter and seal it, mark it with your seal, and then when it got to whoever it was responded to, if the seal was still intact, then they knew it was private. No one had seen it, thus breaking the seal, which you always hear about. So that was sort of one of the reasons to keep things private, and it was used as a signature, especially for those who could not make their own signature. Now, people who could read and write, the nobility or the people that had money, usually wrote the letters themselves, but they had their servants deliver them, and they didn't want the servants to look at them. So again, they would fold the letters, they would put the seal on it, and then the servants would take it to whomever it was addressed to, and because the seal was intact, they would know nobody had seen it. So seals were a really important part of the 1800s. At the same time, we were still really being influenced in America by royalty and by Britain. And Victoria and her husband wore beautiful pocket watches and little decorative things. And his style of having a 2-chain hang was called the Prince Albert, after him. So women loved this style as much as men. Men loved it. They would put personalized little things on it. A lot of theirs were also very ornate and beautiful, as well as the women's, but the women's were called something called chatelaine. And chatelaine is a French word that means mistress of the chateau. And it would have been worn from your waist or on a belt, and it usually had keys on it. And if you had the keys, then you were the mistress of the house. So if you were a middle-class person and you had that on with the keys, then people would know that you were the mistress of the house. But if you were upper class, you wouldn't need the keys. The head housekeeper would have that. So they would wear decorative things like chatelaine pencils and pens, and they would have knitting, they would have little needle cases, they would have perfume bottles, they would have lockets, and they would have their wax seals. And from there is where I just sort of got all giddy about these. So I started a little collection of my own, and I wanted to share the treasures with you. I'm very excited about this little collection, and I don't know, they just make me happy. I think they're beautiful. So I'm going to talk a little bit while I show you them. So the first one that I purchased was actually this one, which you might have seen in my Instagram story. And the thing is that this is probably more typical of America, Victorian times, late 1800s, early 1900s, when they would wear them on a very long chain around their neck, and there would be this little piece on it that was a slide. I just purchased this one. I don't even know how to use it yet, but I wanted to at least show you. And then this would be hung at the bottom. And yes, indeed, this is actually a glass seal. If you can see, it has a flat edge, but it's recessed. The engraving is recessed. This is what's called an intaglio engraving. And it's a method of making a print that was invented in Germany in the 1430s. But intaglio seals have actually been around since Egypt, and they were extremely popular in the 17th and 1800s. It is a stamp that identifies the person, although at this point some of them were just really popular designs. They were really fond of using Greek gods and goddesses. And let's see if I can find, I made a stamp from some of these. I think this is the stamp I made. So you can see the impression made by this one. Let's see if I can get her lined up. She's like a bust. There you go. Now you can see her. So someone could wear this around their neck and then also do the wax seal. Then I bought a lot of 3, which was very exciting. And then it had this little locket, which is not a seal, but it would be put on a pocket watch. It would be considered a fob or a chatelaine decoration. And then this beauty right here, which again can also be used as to seal wax in it. Most of these that were for the upper middle class or the middle class were just gold filled. They weren't solid gold, but you can find solid gold ones on the market. I am definitely not in that price point. And they use a lot of semi-precious stones on there, but one of the most common ones that you're going to see is called bloodstone. And bloodstone, I don't have one, but I'll put a picture of bloodstone in right about here. So this is an image I took off the internet, and this is bloodstone. It is essentially jasper, but in the Middle Ages, it was called bloodstone because it was said to have formed when the crucifixion happened, and drops of blood from Jesus fell to the dark green ground. So that's sort of where the name came from, and it seemed to be a very popular stone from which different seals were carved into, or fobs were just used. So I also have this piece, which I thought was a wax seal, but because it's, I don't know if you can see, it's really beautiful blue stone, and it has like a little cameo of a woman right there. But when I stamp it, it stamps this way. So I'm not sure if it would be used as a wax seal. I used it as a wax seal. But I'm not sure if it was just a really beautiful fob or what. It's got some heft to this one. And then a lot of people that were late 1800s, early 1900s could order these from like Sears or from another one, blank, and then they would get monogrammed in there their letters, and then they could push the seal in from that point. Although I wonder about that, because wouldn't this be backwards if we put this down right now? I don't know. I haven't tried to use this one. And a lot of them are also would be, they remain blank. But this one also has the monogram in it. And then my last one, which was a Christmas gift from my husband, is just the one that I think is the most special. This actually may be bloodstone because it does fit the description, although I don't really see red flecks in it, but it is that dark green. And on one side is this piece that can be used as a seal down. And then this piece, which has the Greek god Hermes or Mercury, which is a very common god that they used in these because he represented correspondence. He was the messenger between the gods, so he was often used on stamps. This is a seal as well, but then you open it up and there's a locket inside. This side is blank, but this side, let me see if I can get it open. I have to take it off camera so I don't break it. Ooh, this side has, look at her. Is she not super lovely? I love her. She looks so sassy and sweet, and I love that this piece has this little personal touch to it. And then it folds all the way back up into a locket. I did make a press of that one. Let's see if I can get it to shine. Can you see the Hermes, the right there? I just love that they are utilitarian in the sense that they have a function, but they're also so beautiful. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys today when talking about these is just that, first of all, you can find these. You can find these on eBay. You can find these on Etsy. You can find them at estate sales. There are places online you can find these. And you can find them, I mean, some of them were on the more expensive side, but like I think these two, I think I bought these two for $40 for the pair. So that's $20 each. And I think they're just beautiful, and I think that's very affordable. I saw other ones going every now and then cheaper, depending on whether or not you were a stickler for the condition and the material. And then I bought a little collection of pocket watch keys, which I just think are so cool as well. And some other little fobs that are like, you know, lockets and semi-precious stones and things like that. So when we look at things like this one is not sterling, and this would be one that maybe a lower class person might have. They made them out of pot metals, and then they would just dip them into non-precious metals that would make them shinier. So everybody kind of had them, and a pocket watch or these types of things were passed on from generation to generation. They were really used in the railroad industry quite a lot. And women used them in Victorian times for decorations. I'm going to show you some pictures right now where you'll see examples of these kinds of chains and these kinds of decorations used in fashion. So here are a variety of pictures I've grabbed from the internet that can better show you some of the things I'm talking about. And this really cool painting of Marie Antoinette, you see at her waist she has two chatelaine chains, one on each side, a silver and a gold. Because she's royalty, I'm sure they're adorned with semi-precious stones and are made of actual gold and silver. Some things that were hung from these might be thimbles, little tiny pairs of scissors, needle cases, little things of perfume or smelling salts. As royalty, I'm sure hers were purely decorative and not utilitarian at all. Victorian ladies tended to wear long chains with slides on them, and that's a picture here. In this picture, you can see an actual pocket watch that she has put on her lace, and right to the left is a dark ribbon, which hangs quite long in the original picture, which could be a mourning ribbon, which I'll get to later. And so that pocket watch could be actually from her husband or a beloved person who has died, and she has it next to the mourning ribbon. In this picture, we can see the long chain hanging from her collar and then pinned up with the pocket watch. It's a really beautiful example. You can see the pin on her neck that's got like a horseshoe symbolizing good luck. The gold chain has the slide piece, if you can see that, and then the chain kind of hangs and then is pinned. Really nice example of a woman wearing a pocket watch. So here's an example again of an intaglio seal. It's in a pendant or a fob, so you could hang it on a necklace or put it on the bottom of a pocket watch. Then we see a lot of fobs that are really creative and interesting, and people used to have all sorts of designs that reflected their personalities. But at the bottom, again, they were engraved in a way that they could be a wax seal. I tended to find a lot of really interesting ones and very affordable ones on eBay in the UK. I think they're more prevalent there than they are in the United States. Here's one that's on U.S. eBay right now, and it's gambling and etched into bone is my guess. Really interesting and beautiful fobs. There's just such a collection of them out there. You'll find that this is what a pocket watch with the T-bar and the clasp and a fob looks like. And you can also search by something called mourning ribbons. That's what this is, out of an old Sears and Roebuck catalog. But they have a lot of the same fobs and charms and buckles attached to them that you would find on pocket watches or on pendants. So it's another place to search if you're looking to own some fobs for yourself. And here's an example of jewelry you can find now where they take old watch chains and charms and they make them into new jewelry to wear, which is a whole other rabbit hole that I don't even want to fall into, but I just think these are gorgeous. So the last thing I wanted to tell you about, especially if you start looking for these online just out of curiosity or maybe because you would like to have your own wax seal fob, is one of the things you can type in is mourning, as in you're mourning a loss, mourning jewelry. Mourning jewelry is a little macabre, but it was definitely something the Victorians were very much about. When Queen Victoria lost Albert, she went into deep mourning and had an elaborate dark mourning dress and outfit created with black jewelry. And she never actually came out of mourning. She had this elaborate outfit made, and I think they call it something about weeds. I'll have to look that up, but it's something like a weeds dress, and that had to do with mourning a loss, and there was jewelry and things that went with it. Well, Americans were heavily influenced by her, but also the fact that at the same time we were going through a lot of mourning in America. The Civil War was going on. People were losing lots of people to the war, their sons, their husbands. People were losing children all the time. People were dying in tragedies. Your life expectancy wasn't that long. So mourning jewelry became extremely popular, and a lot of these fobs were put on what was called a mourning ribbon, which I will show you a picture of here. And essentially they were gross grain black ribbon with like a buckle and like a little fastener, and the fobs, whether they were lockets or they were these kinds of fobs, would hang from them, and they may even have some of those chatelaine type elements. Those tend to be a little bit less expensive, and sometimes they're really interesting because sometimes they're beaded. I found a couple that were completely black seed beads, and those are interesting as well. And even if you weren't interested in the ribbon, you could always cut off the fob. So I just found, even though this is all jewelry, I find this really ties in well with papercraft and correspondence, and I thought this would be so special in a journal if every time I made a journal I did at least one seal from one of my vintage collections. I thought that was a nice little touch, and I just thought, you know, correspondence, they did not need to have seals once they had gummed envelopes. Once there were gummed envelopes and you could lick them and seal them and people knew they couldn't get inside of them, there was no longer need for the seal. But up until that time, we still used the seal. Envelopes were too expensive even when they came out. Seals, paper was still folded and sealed and put through the mail. It was the gummed envelope that started the seals going away, and then of course electronic technology. We don't need to send letters anymore. We can send a message. We don't need to send a handwritten note anymore. So the romanticism of writing letters and corresponding still I absolutely love, and I just thought really fit in well with papercraft and journaling. And if you're lucky enough to find some of these very inexpensively, you can make your own seals for your own artwork. You could include them in a journal. It would just be a really special thing. So that's my share. And that's January. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed falling down this rabbit hole with me. I hope I introduced you to something maybe you never saw before. And I thank you for your support. I thank you for tuning in every month. I am working on a huge project right now, like really huge. I started thinking about it last summer, and I'm in the thick of it right now. I'm not even on social media that much because I'm working on it so much. I can't wait to share it to you. It's inspired by 2 cabinet cards that I purchased from a friend, and a whole story has come out of that, and I just can't wait to show it to you. I hope it's soon, but if you don't hear from me, it's because I'm locked in here working on that project. I hope you guys have some projects that are exciting you right now, and I look forward to talking to you in February. Take care.